My daughter Emily, with a scornful smile, said, "You're not coming with us to Hawaii." And her husband David added, "You're too poor to pay for the ticket." I smiled and said nothing, because I knew I had already booked a flight to Hawaii on a private jet. When they found out, their reaction was worth every dollar. You wouldn't believe what they did. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. You're not coming with us to Hawaii. Emily's voice cut through the quiet dining room like a blade, her fork suspended halfway to her mouth. The scratched wooden table suddenly felt enormous between us, every worn groove a canyon of silence. I set down my coffee cup, the ceramic clicking against the mismatched saucer. "I just thought, Dad, seriously." She rolled her eyes, that same dismissive gesture I'd seen 1,000 times since she was 12. "This is a family vacation. David's parents are already coming, and we can't afford to—" "You're too poor to pay for a ticket." David's words hit like a physical blow, his smug smile spreading across his face as he leaned back in his chair. The springs creaked under his weight, a sound that seemed to echo in the sudden stillness. Sophia looked up from her mashed potatoes, confusion clouding her 12-year-old features. "But why can't Grandpa come? He's family too." "Because," Emily said, her voice taking on that sharp edge I'd learned to recognize, "the resort we're staying at costs $800 a night. The flights alone are $1,500 each. Grandpa can't afford that kind of money." I smiled. Actually smiled. The corners of my mouth turned up naturally, surprising even myself. "I understand," I said quietly, watching David's satisfaction deepen. "You're right. I couldn't afford that." Jacob pushed his green beans around his plate, his small voice barely audible. "Maybe we could go camping instead? All together?" Emily's laugh was brittle. "Honey, Daddy worked very hard to plan this trip. We're staying at the Grand Wailea Resort. There's going to be swimming pools everywhere and snorkeling and it's expensive," David interrupted, his eyes fixed on me with something like malicious pleasure. "The kind of place where you need to dress properly for dinner, where people expect certain standards." The implication hung in the air like smoke. I glanced down at my flannel shirt, the one with the small tear near the pocket that I'd never bothered to repair, the one that suddenly felt like a uniform of failure. "We leave Thursday morning," Emily continued, her tone brightening as she turned away from me toward David. "First class to Honolulu, then the helicopter transfer to the resort. Your parents are going to love the spa treatments. The concierge already arranged everything," David added, reaching across the table to squeeze Emily's hand. "Private cabana by the ocean, sunset sailing, that wine tasting you wanted." I listened to them plan their paradise, their voices growing more animated with each expensive detail. The chandelier above us, a simple brass fixture I'd bought 20 years ago, cast long shadows across their faces as they talked about money, like it was air, casual and infinite. "More coffee, Dad?" Emily asked, her tone suddenly artificially bright, as if she could paper over the wounds with politeness. "No, thank you." I stood, beginning to clear the plates. The sound of silverware against ceramic filled the space where conversation had died. "I think I'll just clean up." David's chair scraped against the hardwood floor as he pushed back from the table. "We should get going anyway. Early morning tomorrow, and I want to double-check our luggage restrictions." "Of course." I stacked the plates carefully, my hands steady despite the tremor I felt in my chest. "Have a wonderful time." Emily kissed my cheek, her lips cold and quick. "We'll send pictures," she said, already reaching for her purse. "Maybe next time we can plan something more reasonable." I watched them bundle the children into coats, listened to the sounds of zippers and goodbyes and car doors slamming. The engine of David's BMW purred to life, then faded into the distance, leaving me alone with the debris of dinner and the echo of their laughter. The house settled into silence around me, broken only by the steady tick of the kitchen clock. I stood at the window, watching their taillights disappear around the corner, and my smile finally faded. In its place, something else entirely began to take shape. They had no idea what they'd just done. The dishes clinked softly as I scraped the remnants of dinner into the trash, each movement automatic, meditative. Green beans that Jacob had pushed around his plate, Emily's half-eaten potatoes, abandoned when the conversation turned to money, the simple meal that had somehow become a battlefield. I turned on the faucet, watching the water cascade over the plates, and that's when I saw it, a business card that had slipped from the kitchen drawer, floating face up in the sudsy water. Thompson Tech Solutions, my old company logo, barely visible through the soap bubbles. I picked it up, water dripping from my fingers, and suddenly I was back in that boardroom in 2019. The mahogany table that reflected our faces like a mirror, the handshake that transferred $15 million to my account, the way the buyer's eyes had lit up when he saw our user engagement numbers. "You built something special here, Robert," he'd said, the check sliding across the polished surface. "Revolutionary, really. This authentication software is going to change everything." I'd felt pride then, and relief. Years of 18-hour days, of Margaret bringing me coffee at midnight while I debugged code, of missing Emily's soccer games because we were chasing our next funding round. It had all been worth it in that moment. Margaret had been waiting in the parking garage, her face glowing with excitement. "How did it go?" "We did it," I'd whispered, holding her close. "We actually did it." But later that night, as we'd sat in our kitchen, this same kitchen, she'd grown quiet. "Robert," she'd said, stirring her tea thoughtfully, "money changes people. It shows who they really are." "What do you mean?" "I mean, now you'll find out who your real friends are, who really loves you for you, not for what you can provide." She'd reached across the table, her fingers warm against mine. "Promise me something. Promise me you won't let them know right away. Let them show you their true hearts first." I'd laughed then, thought she was being overly cautious. But Margaret had been right about everything else in our 35 years together. Right about the business, right about people, right about Emily's growing obsession with appearances. 3 years since cancer took her. 3 years of watching our daughter drift further into a world where worth was measured in designer handbags and vacation destinations. 3 years of increasingly awkward dinners where David's insults grew sharper and Emily's disappointment in her failed father became more obvious. I'd hoped family would be different, hoped that blood would matter more than bank accounts. Tonight had been the final test, and Emily had failed spectacularly. I dried my hands on the old dish towel, the one with the faded roses that Margaret had loved, and walked to my small office. The laptop was ancient by today's standards, but it worked fine for checking my investments. I opened the browser, navigated to my portfolio dashboard, and watched the numbers load. $15.2 million, up from last month. The irony wasn't lost on me. Emily's entire Hawaiian vacation, the one I was too poor to afford, cost less than what my investments made in a single week. The private resort room that David had mentioned so smugly, I could buy the entire resort without touching my principal. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. Margaret's voice echoed in my memory. "Money shows who they really are." Well, now I knew. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness, feeling something crystallize in my chest. Not just hurt anymore, but purpose. They thought they knew Robert Thompson, the failed widower in his modest house, struggling to make ends meet. They had no idea they'd just awakened Robert Thompson, the entrepreneur, the strategist, the man who'd built something from nothing and sold it for millions. Emily needed to learn that actions have consequences. That cruelty, especially to family, comes with a price. And David needed to learn that assumptions about people can be very, very dangerous. I stood up, suddenly energized. Margaret would have understood. She'd always believed in teaching through experience rather than words. "Show, don't tell," she'd say when Emily was small and misbehaving. Well, it was time to show them something they'd never forget. The coffee maker gurgled to life at 6 a.m., same as always, but nothing else about this morning felt routine. I stood at the kitchen counter, watching the dark liquid fill the pot, my mind already racing with possibilities. The newspaper lay unopened on the table. For the first time in years, I had more pressing matters than the morning headlines. I carried my mug to the small office, powered up the laptop, and opened my old address book. Names and numbers I hadn't called in years, connections from my business days that I'd maintained out of habit rather than necessity. Today, those connections were about to become very valuable. First, reconnaissance. I opened Facebook, something I rarely bothered with, and navigated to Emily's profile. Her privacy settings were laughably loose. Every detail of her life displayed for the world to see. There it was, a photo from yesterday evening, her and David grinning at some trendy restaurant, champagne flutes raised in a toast. The caption read, "Celebrating our upcoming Hawaiian adventure. Can't wait for the Grand Wailea Resort. Acha Blessed, Hawaii, family time." I scrolled through her recent posts, each one a breadcrumb in my investigation. Check-in at the airport showing their departure time. A photo of their flight confirmation, gate numbers clearly visible. David's Instagram account, even less secure, showing their hotel reservation details and planned activities. Amazing how much people shared online. In my business days, we'd spent thousands on competitive intelligence that was far less detailed than what my daughter posted for free. I opened a Word document and began taking notes, the old analytical mind clicking into gear. Flight, American Airlines 847, departing Thursday 7:15 a.m., arriving Honolulu 11:30 a.m. local time. Hotel, Grand Wailea Resort, Oceanfront Suite, arriving May 15th, departing May 22nd. Activities, snorkeling tour, Friday, spa day Saturday, sunset dinner cruise Sunday. The phone rang, startling me from my research. I almost ignored it, then saw the name Marcus Chen, former client and now VP of Operations at Exclusive Travel Partners. "Marcus," I answered, injecting warmth into my voice. "It's been too long." "Robert, I was just thinking about you. How are you holding up?" "Better than expected, actually. Listen, I need a favor. You still have contacts in the Hawaiian hospitality industry?" "Of course. What do you need?" I explained that I was looking into a surprise visit to see family, gave him the hotel details. Marcus's tone shifted to professional interest immediately. "The Grand Wailea? Beautiful property. Very exclusive. I can make some calls. See what I can find out about your family's arrangements. When are you thinking of visiting?" "Same week they're there. I'd like to coordinate something special." "Consider it done. I'll call you back within the hour." True to his word, Marcus called back 53 minutes later. "Your daughter's family is in the Napua Tower, Suite 4012. Premium oceanfront. They've booked several high-end excursions through the concierge. Robert, I have to ask, this is a very expensive property. Are you sure you want to?" "Marcus, what would it cost to book the presidential suite in the same hotel? Same dates?" Silence on the other end. Then, "Robert, the presidential suite at the Grand Wailea runs about $12,000 a night. For a week you're looking at—" "I can handle it. What else?" "Well, if you're serious about making an impression, you'd need transportation. The family's taking the standard shuttle from the airport, but we could arrange helicopter transfer directly to the resort. Much more dramatic." "Perfect. Set it up." After hanging up, I stared at my notes, the plan taking shape. But there was still one more element needed, the most important one. I needed to arrive in style, in a way that would make Emily and David understand exactly how wrong they'd been about my finances. I Googled private jet Portland to Hawaii and started making calls. The first 3 companies treated me like I was wasting their time. My modest voice and simple questions didn't scream serious client. But the 4th company, Platinum Aviation, transferred me to a senior consultant who listened carefully to my requirements. "Mr. Thompson, we can absolutely accommodate your travel needs. Our Citation X Plus can make the journey with one fuel stop, or we have a Gulfstream G650 available that can make the trip nonstop. The Citation would be $45,000 for the round trip, the Gulfstream $68,000. I paused, letting the numbers sink in. Emily's entire vacation cost less than half of either option. "I'd like to schedule a consultation," I said. "Today, if possible." "Of course. We're located at the Executive Aviation Terminal at PDX. Would 2 o'clock work?" "Perfect." I hung up and leaned back in my chair, adrenaline coursing through my veins. This was really happening. After years of hiding my success, of living modestly, while Emily and David grew increasingly dismissive, I was about to reveal the truth in the most dramatic way possible. Margaret would have laughed at the irony. "You always were theatrical," she'd have said. "But sometimes people need a grand gesture to understand what they've been missing." I closed the laptop and headed for the shower. It was time to remind myself how to be Robert Thompson, successful businessman, instead of Robert Thompson, disappointing father. The Grand Wailea Resort had no idea what was coming. The phone felt heavy in my hand as I dialed Platinum Aviation's number. No more research, no more planning. This was the moment the idea became reality. Platinum Aviation, this is Sarah speaking. Good morning, Sarah. This is Robert Thompson. I called earlier about private charter service to Hawaii. Of course, Mr. Thompson. I have your consultation scheduled for 2 o'clock today. Will you be able to make it? Actually, I was hoping we could move that up. I'm ready to book immediately. A pause. Certainly. I can have James meet with you at 11. He's our senior aviation consultant. I checked my watch. 9:47 a.m. Plenty of time to drive to the airport and handle this properly. Perfect. I'll be there. The executive aviation terminal at Portland International was a different world from the main passenger terminals. No crowds, no security lines, just a quiet building with leather furniture and coffee that actually tasted like coffee. I parked my modest Honda Civic between a Tesla and a Mercedes, feeling slightly ridiculous. The receptionist looked up as I entered, her smile professional but cautious. My jeans and flannel shirt clearly weren't the usual uniform of private aviation clients. I'm Robert Thompson, I said. I have an appointment with James. Of course. He'll be right with you. Can I get you anything while you wait? I was about to decline when James appeared, a man in his 40s wearing an expensive suit that fit perfectly, the kind of professional polish that commanded respect. Mr. Thompson? James Mitchell? Thank you for coming in. His handshake was firm, his manner courteous but reserved. I could see him taking in my appearance, making calculations about whether I was a serious client or someone who'd waste his time. I understand you're interested in charter service to Hawaii, he said, leading me to a private conference room. When are you looking to travel? Thursday morning. I need to arrive in Honolulu by early afternoon. That's quite short notice. May I ask the nature of your trip? I leaned back in the leather chair, studying his face. Family business. I need to make an impression. I see. For Hawaii, we have several aircraft options available. The Citation X Plus is our most popular choice for that route. What's the fastest you have? James's eyebrows rose slightly. The Gulfstream G650 is our flagship aircraft. It can make the journey non-stop in about 5.5 hours. Very comfortable. Seats up to 14 passengers. Cost? For Thursday departure and return the following week, you're looking at $68,000. I reached into my wallet and pulled out my black American Express card, placing it on the table between us. James's entire demeanor shifted. I'll take it, I said simply. Excellent. His voice carried new respect, new attention. Let me pull up our availability and get some details from you. For the next hour, we planned every aspect of the trip. Departure time, 9 a.m., giving me plenty of time to arrive after Emily's family had settled in. Catering, simple but elegant, though I'd barely eat anything. Ground transportation, helicopter transfer, directly to the Grand Wailea Resort. The helicopter will land on the resort's private pad, James explained, his fingers flying over his tablet. Very dramatic arrival, if that's what you're looking for. It is. We'll need to coordinate with the hotel's concierge. Do you have reservations there? Being arranged. The presidential suite. James nodded as if this were perfectly normal, though I caught the slight widening of his eyes. Of course. We'll have ground transportation waiting at the helicopter pad to take you directly to the hotel. The paperwork was surprisingly straightforward. Credit card authorization for $68,000, more than many people made in a year, charged as casually as a grocery bill. Flight manifest, contact information, emergency protocols. Is there anything else you need, Mr. Thompson? James asked as we concluded the arrangements. Privacy. I don't want my family to know I'm coming until I arrive. Understood. Discretion is one of our core services. I walked out of that building feeling like I'd shed a skin. The respectful nods from the staff, the VIP treatment, the casual acceptance of spending more on a single flight than most people spent on a car, it reminded me who I really was underneath the modest exterior. Driving home, my phone buzzed with confirmation messages. Flight itinerary, hotel arrangements from Marcus, helicopter transfer confirmation. Each notification made the plan more real, more irreversible. Emily and David thought they knew me, thought they could dismiss me as a poor old man who couldn't afford their expensive lifestyle. They had no idea they'd just guaranteed themselves a lesson they'd never forget. I pulled into my driveway, looking at the small house that had been my refuge for the past 3 years. It was still home, still comfortable, but it no longer felt like a hiding place. Thursday morning, I would step out of that helicopter onto the Grand Wailea's private landing pad, and Emily would discover exactly how wrong she'd been about her poor father. The only question now was whether she'd learn anything from the experience, or if this would simply be the most expensive, I told you so, in family history. Either way, it was going to be worth every dollar. 2 days passed in quiet preparation. I folded clothes methodically, arranged my travel documents in the leather portfolio Margaret had given me years ago, and double-checked my flight confirmation for the third time. The suitcase lay open on my bed, like a promise. Casual vacation shirts, comfortable walking shoes, the kind of wardrobe a man takes on a real vacation, not the desperate scheme Emily imagined. The sound of car doors slamming in my driveway cut through the peaceful afternoon. Then footsteps on the porch, confident and familiar. Before I could reach the front door, I heard the click of a key in the lock. "Dad, are you home?" Emily's voice carried that particular tone of someone who expected to be alone. I emerged from the bedroom, travel documents still in my hand, just as she rounded the corner with 2 large shopping bags. Her eyes went immediately to the suitcase visible through my doorway, then to the papers in my hand, and her face transformed. "What is that?" The bags dropped from her hands, contents spilling across my hardwood floor. "Are you seriously planning to follow us?" "Good afternoon to you too, Emily." I set the documents on the hall table. "I'm taking a vacation." "A vacation?" Her voice climbed an octave. "Dad, this is insane. You cannot follow us to Hawaii. You cannot stalk our family." "I'm not following anyone. I planned my own trip." "To Hawaii?" "The same week we're there." What a coincidence. She kicked at one of the fallen items, a beach towel I'd bought her years ago. "This is beyond inappropriate. You're trying to ruin our family time." I leaned against the doorframe, watching her pace my small living room like a caged animal. "Emily, the Pacific Ocean is quite large. I'm sure we can both enjoy it without crossing paths." "Don't be ridiculous. Hawaii isn't that big, and you know exactly where we're staying." "God, what will David's parents think? What will people say?" "About what?" "About you showing up like some desperate old man who can't take a hint." Her hands flew through the air as she spoke, punctuating each cruel word. "It's pathetic, Dad. You're too old for this kind of behavior, and frankly, you're too poor to afford whatever sad little trip you're imagining." The familiar sting of her words had less power now. I smiled. "I can afford exactly what I need." Emily's laughter was sharp, brittle. "Really? With what money?" "Dad, you live in this tiny house. You drive a 15-year-old car. You shop at Goodwill. Let's not pretend you're taking some luxury vacation. What did you do? Book a hostel? Find some discount motel near the airport?" "Something like that." "This is embarrassing for everyone involved. Cancel whatever pathetic arrangements you've made. If you show up in Hawaii while we're there, I swear we'll leave immediately. We'll cut our vacation short rather than deal with this stalking behavior." I walked to the window, watching a neighbor tend his garden. The afternoon light caught the roses Margaret had planted, still blooming after all these years. "I understand you feel strongly about this." "I feel strongly about not being humiliated. David's parents are lovely people, and they don't need to see this kind of dysfunction. They don't need to witness you following us around like some lost puppy." "I won't be following anyone around." "Then cancel your trip." "No." The simple word hung in the air between us. Emily stared at me as if I'd grown a second head. "No?" "Dad, I'm not asking, I'm telling you. Cancel whatever ridiculous plans you've made, or I'll never speak to you again." "That would be unfortunate." I turned back to face her. "But it wouldn't change my travel plans." Her face flushed red. "Fine. Don't come crying to me when you get stranded somewhere with no money and no way home. Don't call me when your discount hotel turns out to be a dump, or when you can't afford food, or when you realize you're in way over your head." She grabbed her bags, shoving the spilled items back inside with sharp, angry movements. "I'm done trying to protect you from your own poor judgment. If you want to make a fool of yourself, go ahead. Just don't expect any help from us when it all falls apart." The front door slammed behind her with enough force to rattle the windows. I watched through the glass as she threw her bags into the BMW's back seat, her movements sharp with fury. The engine revved aggressively as she backed out of my driveway, tires squealing slightly on the asphalt. The house settled back into silence. I returned to my bedroom, picked up the travel documents from the hall table, and resumed my packing. Emily had just provided the perfect final test of her character, and failed even more spectacularly than I'd expected. Tomorrow morning I would step aboard a private jet worth more than her house, but tonight I had suitcases to finish. The evening quiet felt different after Emily's explosive visit. I completed my packing with methodical precision, checking off items from the list I'd written: medications, casual clothes, the good watch Margaret had given me for our 25th anniversary. Everything folded and arranged in the leather suitcase that had traveled with me to business meetings across 3 continents. My phone rang as I zipped the main compartment closed. The caller ID showed a name I hadn't expected: Michael Clark. "Robert, how are you feeling tonight? Any better?" I paused, phone pressed to my ear. "Better? I'm sorry, Michael. What do you mean?" "Oh." A long silence. "Emily told us you've been quite ill. She said you've been to several doctors, that you're on new medications. I was calling to see if there's anything Martha and I can do. Groceries, errands, anything at all." The room seemed to tilt slightly. Emily had told them I was sick? "That's very kind of you to call," I managed, my mind racing through the implications. "She mentioned you've been having some dizzy spells, that you're too weak to drive some days. We were so worried about you being alone in that house. Are the new medications helping at all?" I sank into my armchair, staring at the packed suitcase, visible through my bedroom doorway. Emily hadn't just excluded me from their vacation. She'd created an elaborate fiction about my health to justify it, to make herself look like the caring daughter protecting her fragile father. "I'm having some good days and bad days," I said carefully, adopting a slightly weaker tone. Of course. Martha wanted me to tell you that we're keeping you in our prayers. And please, don't hesitate to call if you need anything at all. We could bring dinner by sometime this week, or help with any heavy lifting around the house." The genuine warmth in his voice made Emily's deception even more sickening. Michael was a good man, worried about someone he thought was suffering, while his daughter-in-law painted me as helpless and declining. "You're very thoughtful, Michael. I appreciate that more than you know." "Well, you just focus on getting better. Emily says the doctors are optimistic, but these things take time. We understand completely why you can't join us in Hawaii. The travel would be too much strain right now." Ah, there it was, the perfect excuse for my absence, wrapped in concern and medical necessity. "Yes, the doctors did recommend staying close to home," I said, amazed at how easily the lie rolled off my tongue. "Smart thinking. Hawaii will still be there when you're feeling stronger. Maybe next year when you've fully recovered." After he hung up, I sat in the growing darkness, not bothering to turn on the lights. Emily's deception was more elaborate than I'd imagined. She hadn't just rejected me cruelly. She'd crafted an entire narrative that painted her as the devoted daughter, caring for her ailing father, the victim instead of the villain. I wondered who else she'd told. How many people in our extended circle now pitied poor Emily, burdened with a sick father she couldn't possibly include in family activities? How many sympathy cards might I expect, or concerned phone calls from family friends I hadn't heard from in months? The anger that hit me was different from the hurt I'd felt during our dinner confrontation. This was cold, calculating fury. Emily hadn't just been cruel, she'd been strategically cruel, covering her tracks with lies that made her look noble. But she'd also handed me an unexpected gift. When I appeared in Hawaii, healthy and confident, stepping off a private helicopter onto the resort's landing pad, her deception would unravel spectacularly. Everyone would see exactly what kind of person Emily really was. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts, making mental notes of who might call in the coming days, with well wishes for my recovery. Let them call. Let Emily's lie spread as far as she wanted it to go. The bigger the lie, the more spectacular its collapse would be. I carried my suitcase to the front hallway and set it by the door, ready for tomorrow's early departure. My phone buzzed with a final confirmation text from the car service. "Pickup scheduled for 7 a.m. to Executive Aviation Terminal." Emily thought she was protecting herself with her fictional sick father. Tomorrow she'd discover that some illnesses have very dramatic recoveries. The alarm clock was unnecessary. I woke at 5:30, my body electric with anticipation. This was the day Emily would learn that assumptions about people can be dangerously wrong. Coffee brewed while I showered and dressed, khakis and a polo shirt, the kind of understated clothes that wouldn't draw attention until I wanted them to. I ate breakfast methodically. Steel-cut oats, fresh fruit, orange juice, fuel for what would be a very interesting day. The car service arrived precisely at 7. A black sedan, professional but not ostentatious, driven by a man who simply nodded and loaded my suitcase without commentary. We drove through Portland's quiet morning streets, past the neighborhoods where Emily lived her carefully curated life, toward the airport where my real life was about to begin. The executive aviation terminal was a different world from the main passenger building. No crowds, no lines, no harried travelers dragging oversized bags, just quiet efficiency and understated luxury. The receptionist greeted me by name. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson. Your aircraft is ready for departure. Would you like coffee while we complete the final paperwork?" "That would be nice." She handed me a proper porcelain cup, none of those disposable airline cups, filled with coffee that actually tasted like coffee. Real cream, actual sugar, served on a small silver tray. "Mr. Thompson?" A woman in a crisp uniform approached. "I'm Captain Sarah Morrison. We'll be taking you to Honolulu today." She led me across the tarmac to where the Citation X Plus waited, sleek and white in the morning sun. Not the largest private jet I'd seen, but substantial enough to make a statement. The kind of aircraft that cost more per hour to operate than most people earned in a month. "We'll have you in Honolulu by 2 o'clock local time," Captain Morrison explained as we climbed the air stairs. "Flight time approximately 5 hours and 40 minutes. The weather looks perfect for the entire journey." The interior was everything the sales consultant had promised. Cream leather seats that could fully recline, polished wood trim, a cabin that could comfortably seat 8, but would hold only 1 today. The flight attendant, a professional woman named Janet, offered champagne for takeoff. "Just coffee for now," I said, settling into the leather seat that probably cost more than most people's cars. The takeoff was whisper smooth, Portland falling away beneath us as we climbed into clear Oregon skies. Below, I could see the neighborhoods where Emily and David lived their modest upper-middle-class lives, unaware that her poor father was looking down at them from 30,000 feet above. Janet served lunch on actual china, salmon with lemon and herbs, roasted vegetables, a small salad with vinaigrette that tasted homemade. I ate slowly, reading a Wall Street journal, while the Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly blue beneath us. "More coffee, Mr. Thompson?" "Please." This was how the other half lived, the half Emily thought I could never afford to join. No security lines, no cramped seats, no fellow passengers coughing and snoring, just quiet luxury and professional service, the kind of travel where you arrived refreshed instead of exhausted. I thought about Margaret, how she would have laughed at the extravagance while secretly enjoying every minute. "You always did like to make a point dramatically," she would have said, "but sometimes people need to be shown, not told." My phone buzzed with a text from the hotel. "Welcome to Hawaii, Mr. Thompson. Your helicopter transfer is confirmed for 2:30 p.m. departure from Honolulu International." Perfect timing. Emily's family would be well settled into their routine by now, probably lounging by the pool or exploring the resort. They wouldn't expect any surprises. They were about to get the biggest surprise of their lives. "Beginning our descent into Honolulu," Captain Morrison announced. "Beautiful afternoon for arrival." Through the window I watched the Hawaiian Islands grow larger, emerald jewels set in azure water. Somewhere down there, Emily was enjoying her luxury vacation, secure in the knowledge that her poor father was homesick in Portland, unable to afford anything more exciting than his living room couch. The landing was smooth as silk, the aircraft touching down on Hawaiian soil with barely a bump. As we taxied toward the private aviation terminal, I could see the helicopter waiting, a sleek machine that would complete my transformation from dismissed father to mysterious arrival. "Thank you for flying with us today," Janet said as I prepared to depart. "I hope you have a wonderful time in Hawaii." "I believe I will." The helicopter pilot was already running through his pre-flight checklist as I crossed the tarmac. In 20 minutes, I would be landing at the Grand Wailea Resort, stepping out onto their private helipad like a man accustomed to such transportation. Emily thought she knew who I was. She was about to discover she didn't know me at all. The helicopter swept over Maui's coastline, resort hotels strung along the beaches like jewels on a necklace. Below, I could see the Grand Wailea's distinctive architecture sprawling across pristine beachfront. Pools and gardens and tennis courts laid out like a miniature city. "Beautiful property," the pilot said through the headset. "You picked a good one." "So I'm told." But I wasn't going to the Grand Wailea. My reservation was at the Fairmont Kea Lani, 3 miles up the coast, far enough away to avoid accidental encounters, close enough for strategic positioning when the time came. The Fairmont's lobby was all polished marble and tropical elegance, the kind of understated luxury that whispered rather than shouted. The desk clerk's smile was professionally warm as I approached. "Mr. Thompson, welcome to the Fairmont Kea Lani. We have your oceanfront suite ready, and I see you've arranged helicopter arrival." "Very nice. Thank you." Everything went smoothly. "Excellent. Your suite includes concierge service, private beach access, and... Robert, my goodness, you look wonderful." I turned, my careful plans evaporating in an instant. Michael Clark stood 20 feet away, his face lit with genuine pleasure and surprise. Beside him, Sophia bounced on her toes with excitement. "Grandpa! Grandpa! What are you doing here?" My mind raced through possibilities. Maintain the 6th story? Pretend to be someone else? But Sophia was already running toward me, her arms outstretched for a hug I couldn't refuse. "Hello, sweetheart," I said, lifting her into an embrace while my thoughts scrambled for an explanation. Michael approached, his expression puzzled but delighted. "Robert, this is incredible. You look so much better than Emily described. Are you feeling stronger?" "Much better, thank you." I set Sophia down, forcing my voice to carry just a hint of recovered weakness. "The doctors were encouraged by my recent progress. But what brings you here? Hawaii seems like quite a journey for someone who's been so unwell." "Think fast. The specialist recommended a change of climate, something about sea air and relaxation being beneficial for my condition." Michael nodded sagely. "Of course. And what perfect timing. We're here too." My stomach dropped. "You are?" "Oh yes, though not by choice, I'm afraid. Terrible problems at our original resort. Plumbing disaster in the entire tower, if you can believe it. Management moved our whole party here as compensation. Quite an upgrade, actually. The service has been exceptional." Sophia tugged at my shirt. "Grandpa, are you staying here too? Can we swim together? Mom said you were too sick to come with us." "Well," I said carefully, "I'm feeling much better now." The elevator chimed across the lobby, and my heart sank further as Emily's voice carried across the marble floor. "Sophia, don't wander off like that." Her words died as she spotted me. For a moment her face showed pure shock, then quickly rearranged itself into a brilliant smile. "Dad, what a wonderful surprise!" The transformation was remarkable. Within seconds, Emily had shifted from whatever mood she'd been in to the picture of a delighted daughter. She hurried toward us, David trailing behind, looking confused. "I can't believe you're here. You look so much better." She reached me and gave me a kiss on the cheek, her grip on my arm just tight enough to be a warning. "What a lovely surprise for all of us," Michael beamed. "Isn't it wonderful? Just this morning I was worried about Robert being home alone, and now here he is, looking healthier than I've seen him in months." "Yes," Emily said, her smile never wavering. "It's amazing. Dad, we should talk, catch up properly?" "Of course," I nodded to Michael. "Perhaps we could continue this conversation later? I should get settled in my room." "Absolutely. We're having drinks by the pool at 6 if you'd like to join us. The whole family's here. Martha will be thrilled to see you looking so well." As Michael and Sophia headed toward the restaurant, Emily's smile evaporated. She moved closer, her voice dropping to a fierce whisper. "What the hell are you doing here?" "I told you I had vacation plans. This is insane, Dad. You followed us here. This is stalking behavior." "Emily, I had no idea you'd be at this hotel. Your arrangements were at the Grand Wailea, remember?" "Don't play dumb. You somehow found out we were moved here, and you—" She paused, studying my face. How did you afford this place? How did you afford to get here? I smiled the same mysterious smile that had unsettled her in Portland. I managed. Managed how? Dad, this hotel costs $800 a night. A flight from Portland is $1,500 minimum. You don't have that kind of money. Don't I? Her eyes narrowed. Are you having some kind of breakdown? Because this fantasy about being able to afford luxury travel is genuinely concerning. Did you max out credit cards? Take out some predatory loan? Nothing like that? Then explain it. Explain how you... She stopped as David appeared at her elbow. Everything okay here? David's tone was carefully neutral, but his eyes held suspicion. Everything's fine, Emily said quickly. Dad was just telling me about his travel arrangements. David looked me up and down, taking in my casual clothes and modest appearance. Yeah? How did you get here, Robert? Fly coach and take the bus from the airport? Something like that. Well, David said with barely concealed smugness, I hope you're not expecting us to cover any of your expenses while you're here. We budgeted for our family, not unexpected additions. I wouldn't dream of it. Emily grabbed David's arm. We should let Dad get settled. I'm sure the travel was exhausting for someone in his condition. As they walked away, I heard David's voice carry back. I still don't understand how he afforded this place. Something doesn't add up. If only he knew how right he was. The hotel restaurant's breakfast buffet was nearly empty when I arrived the next morning. Fresh pineapple, perfectly scrambled eggs, coffee that tasted like it had been grown on the islands. A far cry from the instant coffee I'd been drinking at home. I chose a table by the window, watching the ocean waves roll endlessly toward shore. Robert, how are you feeling this morning? Michael approached with a plate of fruit and a concerned expression. I gestured to the empty chair across from me. Much better, thank you. The sea air seems to be helping. Wonderful to hear. He sat down, then hesitated. Robert, I hope you don't mind me asking, but Emily mentioned you might be having some memory issues? Some confusion about finances? I set down my coffee cup carefully. Did she? She's worried about you. Yesterday she said your trip here might be a sign of, well, deteriorating judgment. She mentioned you've been confused about money lately, making poor financial decisions. The pineapple turned sour in my mouth. I see. She loves you, you know. We all do. If you're struggling with cognitive changes, there's no shame in that. People get help for these things all the time. I smiled, the same enigmatic smile that had been unsettling Emily for days. I appreciate your concern, Michael. I really do. After breakfast, I decided to walk the resort grounds. The pathways wound through tropical gardens, past multiple pools where families splashed and laughed. I found myself near the main pool area when familiar voices drifted from a secluded cabana. Getting worse. You saw how confused he was about the hotel costs. Emily's voice carried clearly across the water. Maybe we should have left him in Portland, David replied. He's becoming too much of a burden. I moved closer, hidden behind a screen of palm fronds. The trip here proves he can't make rational decisions anymore, Emily continued. David, I think we need to seriously consider assisted living. Something with memory care. Would he agree to that? He doesn't have to agree. We can get guardianship if we prove he's not competent. Then we can make the financial decisions for him. What about his house? We'll have to sell it. Use the money for his care. It's not worth much, but it'll help with the facility costs. My blood ran cold. They weren't just planning to abandon me. They were planning to take legal control of my life. What about his, day-to-day stuff? David's voice dropped. His doctor appointments, his mail, his bills. We'll handle all of that. It'll be easier once we have guardianship. We can set up power of attorney, manage his finances properly. The poor guy probably doesn't even understand what's happening to him. That's what makes it sad, but also what makes it necessary. I stepped backward, my heart hammering. The scope of their betrayal was breathtaking. Not only had they rejected me cruelly, lied about my health, and planned to institutionalize me, they were plotting to take legal control of my life and assets. If only they knew those assets included over $15 million they'd never see. I retreated to my suite, my mind racing. On my laptop, I researched guardianship laws, confirming what I'd suspected. Without proper legal protections, adult children could indeed gain control over an elderly parent's life if they could prove incompetence. Fortunately, my financial advisors had insisted on comprehensive legal safeguards years ago. Powers of attorney, advance directives, competency evaluations, all designed to prevent exactly this kind of family coup. But Emily and David didn't know that. They thought they were plotting against a helpless old man with a modest house and a tiny savings account. Tomorrow was my departure day. Tomorrow they would learn exactly how wrong they'd been about everything. I opened my phone and sent a text to my pilot. Departure confirmed for 2 p.m. Please ensure everything is perfect. The reply came immediately. Absolutely, Mr. Thompson. We'll be ready. Emily thought she was protecting herself from an embarrassing father. Instead, she was about to experience the most embarrassing moment of her life. The next 2 days passed in a careful dance of avoidance and observation. I timed my meals and pool visits to minimize contact with Emily's family, watching from a distance as they enjoyed their luxury vacation, the same vacation they'd deemed me too poor to afford. Yesterday afternoon, I'd encountered Sophia and Jacob at the hotel's game room, while their parents were at the spa. The children had rushed toward me with genuine excitement. "Grandpa, want to play air hockey with us?" "We missed you at dinner last night," Jacob added. "Mom said you were tired." "I'm feeling better today," I said, accepting Sophia's challenge at the game table. "Tell me about your vacation. What's been your favorite part?" "The snorkeling." Sophia's face lit up. "We saw sea turtles, and Jacob learned to body surf." "That sounds wonderful. Are you having fun with your grandparents?" "Grandpa Michael taught me to play poker," Jacob whispered conspiratorially. "But don't tell Mom." I laughed despite everything. These children were innocent in all of this. Whatever happened tomorrow, I would ensure they weren't hurt by their parents' mistakes. "Grandpa," Sophia said quietly, "are you really sick? Mom keeps telling people you're sick, but you seem fine to me. What do you think?" "I think you're sad, but not sick sad. Different sad." Children saw truth that adults missed, or chose to ignore. This morning I'd had breakfast again with Michael and Martha. They'd insisted on including me in their beach walk, their kindness a sharp contrast to their daughter-in-law's cruelty. "Robert, you seem so much stronger than Emily led us to believe," Martha said as we walked along the water's edge. "Are you sure you're taking all your medications properly?" "I'm being very careful about my health," I replied, which was true in ways she couldn't imagine. "Good. We were so worried when Emily told us about your condition, but seeing you here, enjoying yourself, it's reassuring." Michael nodded. Maybe the doctors were too pessimistic. You know how they can be. I thought about Emily's elaborate lies, the fictional illness she'd created to justify her cruelty. Soon, very soon, the truth would be impossible to ignore. That evening, I finalized my departure arrangements. The private jet would be ready at 2 p.m., just as Emily's family prepared to leave for their commercial flight. The timing would be perfect, public enough for maximum impact, but not so public as to humiliate the children. I also made one additional arrangement. If Sophia and Jacob wanted to fly home with me on the private jet, they could. A special treat for 2 innocent children who'd been caught in their parents' deception. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. "Dad, we're leaving tomorrow at 3 p.m. Are you feeling well enough to travel? We could help you get to the airport if you need assistance." The fake concern in her message was almost laughable. I texted back, "Thank you. I have my own arrangements." Her response came immediately. "Are you sure? The airport can be confusing, and with your condition, I'll be fine." Tomorrow, Emily would discover that her confused father had planned every detail of this encounter with the precision of a military operation. She would learn that assumptions about people could be very dangerous. I packed my suitcase for the final time, leaving out the clothes I'd wear tomorrow. Something casual but dignified. The kind of outfit a millionaire might wear while traveling on his private jet. The last test was over. Emily had failed spectacularly. Now came the reckoning. The hotel lobby bustled with checkout chaos as I descended with my single suitcase. Emily's family clustered near the concierge desk, coordinating taxi arrangements for their commercial flight. "Dad! Perfect timing," Emily called out with artificial brightness. "My car should be here soon," I said, checking my watch. Emily frowned. "Car? Aren't you flying home? I have alternative arrangements. David smirked. Please tell me you didn't book some sketchy discount airline. Through the windows, a black town car appeared. The uniformed driver approached the desk. Thompson party? That's me, I said. Emily stared at the luxury vehicle. Dad, that's expensive car service. Actually, my pilot is expecting me. The lobby froze. David laughed harshly. Your pilot? Robert, this isn't funny. I turned to the children. Would you like to see Grandpa's airplane? You have an airplane? Sophia's eyes widened. I do. Want to ride home with me? Emily's face went pale. This is unrealistic. You don't have an airplane. Let's see, I said simply. 20 surreal minutes later, our convoy arrived at the executive aviation terminal. Through the windows, my citation ex-post gleamed on the tarmac. Crew at attention. Silence. Then Emily whispered, Oh my God. David's jaw dropped. That's a $60 million airplane. I charter it, I said, stepping out. More economical. Captain Morrison approached. Good afternoon, Mr. Thompson. Ready for departure? As we climbed the aircraft stairs, Emily called desperately. Dad, wait. Could we possibly... Is there room? I turned, remembering her words. You're too poor to pay for a ticket. Emily, I said gently, I'm afraid you're too poor to afford this flight. Her face crumpled. I'm sorry. So sorry. Some lessons are learned through experience. The door closed on Emily and David, standing helplessly below, watching their poor father taxi away with their children waving from windows. In Portland, when I had already unpacked all my things and had a little rest, I heard the sound of a car door slamming from the street. Emily's family had arrived, their faces grim with determination. Emily burst through my door, eyes red with fury and tears. We need to talk. Now. After sending the children to wash up, Emily sank into my armchair. The private jet. The money. Explain everything. I settled on the couch. In 2019, I sold my technology company for $15.2 million. Complete silence. 15 million, Emily repeated slowly. Current net worth, 18 million. David collapsed onto the couch. You're a millionaire. Several times over. I lived modestly because your mother believed wealth changes people. She wanted me to discover who loved me for myself. Martha spoke first. Emily told us you were sick, having financial problems. I was never sick. That was Emily's story? Emily's face went white. Dad, you told everyone I was confused, needed supervision. You planned assisted living, guardianship over my finances. Michael's face flushed with anger. Emily, you lied to us. I thought he was broke, Emily protested, maybe developing dementia. So you decided to control his life? Martha's voice was sharp. I raised my hand for silence. Emily, you judged my worth by appearances. You rejected me cruelly, lied about my health, planned to institutionalize me. I'm sorry, so sorry. I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't eliminate consequences. I looked at her steadily. I've revised my will. Your inheritance goes to Sophia and Jacob's Education Trust. They'll receive it at 25 if they demonstrate proper values. Emily began crying. You're cutting me out? I'm ensuring the money builds character, not just bank accounts. David finally spoke. I was wrong about everything. I'm sorry. Thank you. I accept your apology. The children emerged, sensing change. Sophia asked, Grandpa, are you rich? I'm comfortable, sweetheart. Emily wiped her eyes. Could we rebuild our relationship? Could you teach me to be better? I smiled genuinely for the first time in months. I like that very much. After they left, my phone rang. Emily, thank you for the lesson, for forgiveness, for giving me a chance. You're welcome. I love you. I love you too. Next time, maybe just tell me directly. I laughed. I'll consider it. Justice served with mercy, worth every dollar spent. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching. My daughter forbade me from attending her wedding, calling me too ugly. But when I entered the hall, the guests were stunned, and she dropped her champagne glass on the floor. She was afraid of embarrassment, but instead she saw something else. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The hipster cafe chair groaned under my weight as I shifted, checking my watch for the third time. 2:15. Beatrice was never late, which meant something big was happening. The exposed brick walls and indie music made me feel like an elephant in a pottery shop, but she'd chosen this place. My black coffee had gone cold 20 minutes ago. Young professionals tapped away on MacBooks around me, their conversations about startups and cryptocurrency floating over the acoustic guitar bleeding from hidden speakers. I pulled my reading glasses from my shirt pocket, then pushed them back. Nothing to read except the anxiety in my chest. The sound of expensive heels on hardwood made me look up. There she was, my beautiful daughter, chestnut hair perfectly styled, striding through the cafe like she owned it. Her smile was radiant, almost glowing. Something sparkled on her left hand. "Dad!" She rushed over, practically bouncing. "I have the most incredible news." I stood up too quickly, the chair scraping against the floor. "Sweetheart, what's—" "Richard proposed." She thrust her hand toward me, the diamond catching the warm cafe lights. "Look at this ring. Isn't it gorgeous?" My heart nearly burst. "Beatrice, that's wonderful. I'm so happy for you." I reached across the small table to squeeze her hand, careful not to knock over the coffee cups. "Tell me everything. When? How?" She slid into the chair opposite me, her excitement infectious. "Last night, at Powell's City of Books. He had them set up this whole romantic scene in the rare book room. Candles everywhere, first edition poetry books. It was like something from a movie." Richard sounds like a thoughtful young man. I'd never met him, but any man who made my daughter this happy had my approval. "What does he do again?" "He owns a tech startup, very successful." She waved her hand dismissively, the diamond catching light again. "But Dad, that's not even the best part. We're planning the most amazing wedding." I leaned forward, caught up in her enthusiasm. "Tell me about it." "The Rose Garden Pavilion in Washington Park, June 22nd, 150 guests." Her eyes sparkled as she painted the picture. "Imagine it. Garden ceremony with the city skyline behind us, reception under the stars, string quartet for the ceremony, jazz band for dancing. It's going to be absolutely perfect." The pride in my chest swelled. My little girl planning her dream wedding. "It sounds beautiful, sweetheart. I can't wait to walk you down that aisle." Something flickered across her face, too quick to catch. "Actually, Dad, there's something I need to discuss with you about the wedding." "Anything. You know I will help however I can." She touched my arm, her voice becoming softer, more careful. "The venue, the catering, the flowers, the music, it all adds up. We're talking about a $40,000 event." I blinked. $40,000 was more than I'd spent on my truck. That's quite a bit." "I know it sounds like a lot." Her fingers traced patterns on the table. "But this is my one chance, Dad. My one perfect day. Richard's family is very well connected, very prominent in Portland society. Everything has to be absolutely flawless." The desperation in her voice tugged at my heart. This was my only daughter, my only child since her mother died 10 years ago. If I couldn't give her the perfect wedding, what kind of father was I? "Of course I'll help." The words came out before I'd even fully processed the amount. "It's my daughter's wedding day." Her smile transformed her entire face. "Really? You mean it?" "I mean it." I pulled out my checkbook, hands slightly shaky from excitement and the magnitude of the moment. $40,000 for my beautiful daughter's perfect wedding. I wrote the amount carefully, my engineering training making me double-check each digit. The number looked enormous on the small check, but watching Beatrice's face made it worth every penny. "Thank you, Daddy." She hadn't called me that in years. "You have no idea what this means to me." I tore out the check and slid it across the table. She picked it up with reverence, studying the amount as if memorizing it. "We should celebrate," I said, standing up and reaching for my jacket. "Come over to the house. I'll make dinner. We can look through your mother's jewelry box. Maybe there's something you'd like to wear." "That sounds lovely." She tucked the check carefully into her designer purse. "How about Thursday? I can come by around 10 in the morning." "Perfect. 3 days to prepare something special for her. Maybe pick up some flowers for the house. I'm so proud of you, Beatrice. So happy." Walking to our cars in the light Portland drizzle, I felt taller than I had in months. My daughter was getting married, and I could provide for her dreams. I'd spent 3 days preparing for this moment. The house was spotless, Fresh daffodils sat in my late wife's crystal vase, and a cream-colored envelope rested on the coffee table like a ceremonial offering. Inside was the check that would make my daughter's dreams come true. At exactly 10 o'clock, Beatrice's BMW pulled into the driveway. I watched through the living room window as she gathered her purse and phone, her movements brisk and efficient, businesslike, almost. "Come in, sweetheart," I called out as she knocked. "The door's open." She entered wearing a tailored coat and checking her watch. "Hi, Dad. Sorry I can't stay long. I have a meeting at 11:30. "No problem at all." I gestured toward the living room, where family portraits lined the mantel and my worn leather recliner held court over the space. I wanted to make this special. She perched on the edge of the sofa, purse in her lap, while I settled into my chair and picked up the envelope. "Beatrice, I've been thinking about this moment since you were little." My voice caught slightly. "When you'd play wedding with your dolls, making me walk them down the hallway while your mother played piano. I always knew someday I'd help make your real wedding perfect." I extended the envelope toward her with both hands. "Here's the check, sweetheart, for your perfect wedding. Every penny you need to make your dreams come true." She took it without ceremony, immediately opening it to verify the amount. "Thanks, Dad." The casualness stung a little, but I pushed the feeling aside. Young people were different now, less sentimental. "I can't wait to see you in your wedding dress, walking down that aisle. My beautiful daughter, starting her new life." Beatrice folded the envelope and tucked it into her purse. Then she looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Actually, Dad, there's something else I need to tell you. You won't be at the wedding." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What? What do you mean?" "I mean you're not invited." She said it matter-of-factly, as if discussing the weather. "You won't be there." I gripped the arms of my recliner. "Beatrice, I don't understand. Why wouldn't I be at my daughter's wedding?" "Because you're too disgusting." The words came out flat, without emotion. "I can't risk you embarrassing me in front of the guests. Richard's family, my colleagues, important people from the community. They'll all be there. I need everything to be perfect." The room tilted. "Disgusting? Beatrice, what are you talking about?" "Look at yourself, Dad." She gestured at me dismissively. "You're overweight. You wear the same old clothes. You don't understand how to behave around successful people. I can't have you there making me look bad." I struggled to stand up, my legs unsteady. "Is this about my weight? I know I've gained some pounds since your mother died, but it's about everything." She stood too, slinging her purse over her shoulder. "Your appearance, your mannerisms, the way you talk. You don't fit in with the life I'm building. But I'm your father. I raised you. I loved you. I just gave you $40,000, which I'm keeping, by the way." She moved toward the door. "Thanks for that, but don't expect a wedding invitation." "Beatrice, please." I followed her, stumbling slightly. "We can work this out. I can lose weight, buy new clothes." "Just forget about the wedding, Dad." She opened the front door, cool morning air rushing in. "Pretend it's not happening." I grabbed the doorframe for support, watching her walk down my front steps like she was leaving a business meeting. "Sweetheart, don't do this. Please don't do this." But she was already in her car, backing out of the driveway without looking back. I stood in my doorway until her BMW disappeared around the corner, the sound of her engine fading into the quiet Laurelhurst morning. The house felt enormous and empty behind me. $40,000 was gone, and so was my daughter's respect. The family photos on the mantel seemed to mock me. Happier times when I was a husband and father, not just a disgusting old man who embarrassed people. I closed the door and stared at the space where she'd stood, her words echoing in the sudden silence. The echo of her car door slamming still rang in my ears 2 hours later. I sat in my recliner, staring at the coffee table where the envelope had been, replaying every word she'd said. Too disgusting. My hands were shaking, not from age or caffeine, but from something deeper. A tremor that started in my chest and worked its way out to my fingertips. I kept hearing her voice, that matter-of-fact tone when she delivered the news, like she was canceling a dentist appointment. "You're too disgusting." I forced myself to stand up, my knees protesting. The hallway mirror caught my reflection as I walked toward the bathroom, and I stopped. When was the last time I'd really looked at myself? I mean, really looked. not just the quick glance while brushing my teeth or combing what was left of my gray hair. In the bathroom, under the harsh fluorescent light, I saw what Beatrice saw. 265 pounds, hanging on a frame that had once been solid muscle. Gray hair that needed cutting, growing wild around my ears. Work-worn hands that showed every year of construction sites and tool belts. Clothes that had fit properly a decade ago, now stretched tight across my belly. Disgusting. I gripped the sink edge, my knuckles going white. Is this what my daughter saw when she looked at me? Not the man who'd taught her to ride a bicycle, who'd stayed up all night when she had pneumonia at 7, who'd worked double shifts to pay for her college tuition. Just a fat old man who would embarrass her in front of her important friends. The mirror didn't lie, but neither did the rage building in my chest. She'd planned this. The whole cafe meeting, the excited announcement, the careful way she'd asked for money. She'd known she was going to take my $40,000 and then cut me out of her life. She'd calculated exactly how to get what she wanted. I walked back to the living room, past the family photos that told a different story. There was 8-year-old Beatrice on my shoulders at the zoo, 16-year-old Beatrice at her high school graduation, my arm around her as she held her diploma, 25-year-old Beatrice at her college graduation, both of us beaming. When had I stopped being her hero and become her embarrassment? Fine, Beatrice. I sat down at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. The screen flickered to life, showing my desktop. A photo of Martha and me on our 25th wedding anniversary. Both of us laughing at something I couldn't remember now. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I typed, "Personal trainers, Portland, Oregon." Dozens of results appeared. Professional fitness coaches, transformation specialists, people who helped other people become the best versions of themselves. I clicked through website after website, reading testimonials from men my age who'd lost 50, 60, 70 pounds. Before and after photos that looked like different people entirely. You want to see what your disgusting father is really worth? I opened a new tab and searched Nordstrom Men's Clothing Portland, then Hairstylist Portland Men, then Orthodontist Portland Adult Braces. The wedding was June 22nd, 3 months away, 12 weeks to transform myself from the man my daughter was ashamed of into someone she wouldn't recognize. By 4 o'clock, I had a notebook filled with appointments and phone numbers, personal trainer consultation for tomorrow morning, shopping appointment at Nordstrom for Saturday, hair appointment for Friday afternoon. By 6 o'clock, I'd made the first call. Revolution Fitness, this is Marcus. Hello, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I need to completely transform myself in 12 weeks. I need to become someone my daughter won't be ashamed of. Sir, I think you've called the right place. I hung up and looked at myself in the darkened kitchen window reflection. The man staring back at me wasn't disgusting anymore. He was determined. You'll see, Beatrice. You'll all see. The alarm screamed at 5:30 a.m., but I'd been awake for an hour already. Sleep had become elusive since Beatrice's betrayal. 2 days ago, my mind churning with plans and her cruel words echoing in the darkness. Too disgusting. I pulled on the new workout clothes I'd bought yesterday, black athletic shorts and a gray moisture-wicking shirt that felt foreign against my skin. The fabric stretched tight across my belly, a stark reminder of what I was fighting against. In the bathroom mirror, I looked like a man playing dress-up in someone else's life. The gym membership card sat on my kitchen counter beside a cup of black coffee. Peak Fitness. I'd driven by 3 times yesterday, watching through the floor-to-ceiling windows as lean, confident people moved through their routines like dancers in a choreographed performance. Today, I'd join them. The Pearl District morning was crisp, downtown Portland just beginning to stir. My truck felt massive in the compact parking spaces, another reminder that I didn't belong in this world of sleek efficiency and purposeful movement. Inside Peak Fitness, the smell hit me first. Rubber, metal, and that faint scent of determination that comes from human sweat mixed with industrial-strength cleaning products. The space was enormous, filled with machines that looked like torture devices designed by engineers with too much imagination. First day? A young man approached, clipboard in hand. His name tag read, Jake, and his smile was professionally warm. I'm your trainer consultant, Dewey Bryant. My voice came out rougher than intended. I need to completely transform myself in 3 months. Jake's eyebrows lifted slightly. That's ambitious. What's driving the timeline? Special event? You could say it's personal. I followed him toward a desk area, aware of other gym members glancing in my direction. Whether they were judging my appearance or simply noting a newcomer, I couldn't tell. Let's start with an assessment. Jake pulled out a form. Current weight? 265. The number felt heavier spoken aloud. Target weight? Whatever makes me look like I deserve respect. Jake paused, pen hovering over the form. Okay, let's say 210. That's a 55-pound goal. Aggressive, but doable with dedication. He looked up. This is going to hurt, Dewey. Are you ready for that? I'm ready for anything. We started with the treadmill. I managed 8 minutes at a walking pace before my lungs began burning and sweat poured down my face. Around me, people ran effortlessly while talking on phones or watching mounted televisions. I felt like a broken machine trying to keep up with race cars. Don't compare yourself to them, Jake said, appearing beside me with a towel. Compare yourself to yesterday's you. The weight machines were worse. Basic movements that should have been natural felt awkward and strained. My body protested every repetition, muscles I'd forgotten I had screaming in rebellion. Jake adjusted seats, demonstrated proper form, corrected my posture with patient professionalism. How long have these people been at this? I gasped between sets, nodding toward a group of regulars who moved through their routines with mechanical precision. Years, some of them, but everyone started somewhere. He loaded lighter weights onto the machine. The secret isn't being perfect. It's showing up consistently. An hour later, I sat on a bench in the locker room, every muscle in my body trembling with exhaustion. My reflection in the mirror across from me looked defeated, red-faced, drenched in sweat, clothes clinging to my overweight frame like wet fabric. Disgusting, but something else flickered in that reflection, a spark of defiance that hadn't been there 2 days ago. Every step on that treadmill had been a step toward proving her wrong. Every weight lifted was proof that I wouldn't remain the man she'd dismissed so casually. Same time Thursday, Jake asked as I gathered my things. Same time every day, I corrected, until June 22nd. He grinned. I like your attitude. See you tomorrow, Dewey. Walking to my truck, my legs felt like jelly, but my spine was straighter than it had been in months. 3 months to transformation. 94 days to become someone she wouldn't recognize. The drive home took me past the Rose Garden Pavilion, where her perfect wedding would unfold. I slowed down, studying the venue through my windshield. Come June, I'd walk through those gates as a different man entirely. 26 days of pain had brought me to this bench overlooking the ravine, my chest heaving like a broken bellows. The run through Forest Park had started well enough, my usual 3-mile loop that I'd been conquering gradually, but today my body had simply quit halfway through, leaving me gasping and defeated on this weathered wooden seat. The Douglas firs towered around me, their branches filtering the late afternoon sunlight into scattered gold coins on the trail. Somewhere in the distance, traffic hummed along northwest Portland streets, but here in the woods, I felt utterly alone with my failure. Too disgusting. 20 pounds lost. Jake had celebrated the milestone yesterday, taking progress photos and updating my workout plan. But sitting here, sweat cooling uncomfortably on my skin, those 20 pounds felt meaningless against the 45 I still needed to lose. The wedding was 68 days away, and I was already hitting walls I couldn't climb. Dewey Bryant? I looked up to see a familiar figure approaching from down the trail. Tom Reynolds, my neighbor from 3 houses over, walking his usual evening route through the park. We'd been army buddies once, decades ago, but since Martha's death, our interactions had dwindled to occasional waves across the street. Tom! I wiped my face with my shirt, trying to disguise the exhaustion. Didn't expect to see you here. I walk this trail every evening. He paused, studying my appearance with sharp eyes that still held traces of the drill sergeant he'd once been. You've lost weight, quite a bit, actually. Some? I struggled to stand, my legs protesting. Tom was still lean at 68, his posture military straight, despite his graying hair. Next to him, I felt like a melting snowman. Rough workout today. He settled onto the bench beside me, uninvited but not unwelcome. Rough month. The words came out before I could stop them. Something about Tom's presence, maybe it was the shared history or just the relief of having another human being acknowledge my existence, loosened my tongue. I can't do this anymore, Tom. It's too hard. Do what? I gestured at my sweat-soaked clothes, my red face, the trail where I'd surrendered. This, all of it, trying to become someone I'm not. Tom leaned back against the bench, his expression thoughtful. Dewey, are you giving up? That's not the soldier I remember from Firebase Charlie. The memory hit me unexpectedly. Firebase Charlie, Vietnam, 1978. 3 days under siege with dwindling supplies and no communication with base command. Tom had been the one who kept morale up, who convinced us we could hold the position until relief arrived. That was different. We were young then. Bullshit. His voice carried the same authority it had 47 years ago. We were scared kids who learned to push through when everything looked hopeless. You've got that same strength, Dewey. What's really driving this transformation? I stared at the ravine below, watching shadows lengthen as evening approached. The words came slowly, painfully, like extracting shrapnel from an old wound. My daughter, Beatrice, she's getting married in June. Congratulations, that's wonderful news. She doesn't want me there. The admission felt like vomiting glass. She called me too disgusting to attend, said I'd embarrass her in front of the important people. Tom's silence stretched long enough that I glanced over at him. His jaw was clenched, the muscles in his temples working. She said that? Your own daughter? After I gave her $40,000 for the perfect wedding? The bitterness in my voice surprised me. She took the money and told me I wasn't invited, because I'm disgusting. Then show her she was wrong. Tom's voice was quiet but fierce. But do it for yourself, not her. I don't know if I can. Look at me. I gestured at my exhausted state. 26 days, and I can barely run 3 miles without collapsing. Tom stood up, his movements crisp and purposeful. You know what my son told me after his mother died? Called me a failure as a husband and father. Said I was too rigid, too demanding, that I'd driven his mother to an early grave with my military ways. I'd never heard this story. Tom had always seemed to have his life perfectly ordered, his family relationships smooth and uncomplicated. What did you do? I became the man he needed, not the man I'd always been. He extended his hand to help me up. It took 2 years, but we rebuilt our relationship, because I was willing to change, not for revenge, but for self-respect. Standing beside him, I felt something shift in my chest, not the burning exhaustion from the run, but something warmer, something that felt like hope rekindling. You think I can do this? I know you can, but you need to decide. Are you transforming yourself to hurt her, or to honor yourself? We walked together toward the parking area, Tom's steady pace matching my slower steps. The question he'd asked echoed in my mind, and gradually I understood the difference. Revenge was about her. Self-respect was about me. Same time tomorrow? Tom asked as we reached our cars. Same time tomorrow, I agreed. But this time it wasn't just about proving Beatrice wrong. It was about proving to myself that the man she'd dismissed still had fight left in him. 6:30 a.m. at peak fitness, and the treadmill hummed beneath my feet at a steady 6-mile-per-hour pace. 2 months ago, I could barely manage 8 minutes of walking. Now I was completing 5-mile runs without stopping, my breathing controlled and steady. The digital display showed calories burned, distance covered, time elapsed, numbers that told the story of my transformation better than any mirror. Looking strong today, Dewey? Jake appeared beside me with his usual morning energy, tablet in hand. Ready for some progress photos? I nodded, stepping off the machine. In the gym's photography area, I stood against the white background where Jake had first documented my defeat. Now, looking at the camera, I saw someone different in the preview screen. Not young, I'd never be 25 again, but solid. Purposeful. 43 pounds lighter than the broken man who'd first walked through those doors. Incredible transformation, Jake said, reviewing the photos. You've put on significant muscle mass while losing the weight. What's your secret? Spite, I said, then caught his confused expression. I mean, determination. Back home by 9 a.m., I stood in my bedroom before the full-length mirror Martha had insisted on hanging there years ago. The reflection that looked back at me bore little resemblance to the man Beatrice had called disgusting, 9 weeks earlier. My face was angular now, cheekbones visible for the first time in decades. My shoulders had broadened from the weight training, creating a V shape that my properly fitting clothes emphasized rather than hid. I opened the desk drawer and pulled out an elegant cream envelope, the kind used for wedding invitations. Inside was a carefully prepared invoice for $40,000, itemized for wedding consultation services and father of the bride exclusion fee. At the bottom, I'd written in my engineer's precise handwriting, payment terms, respect due upon receipt. The wedding was 33 days away, June 22nd, a Saturday ceremony at the Rose Garden Pavilion, followed by a reception under the stars. I'd memorized every detail from the materials she'd shown me that day at the cafe when I still believed I mattered to her. That evening I drove to Mitchell's men's store in downtown Portland, a place I'd passed 1,000 times but never entered. The windows displayed mannequins in perfectly tailored suits that looked like they cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. "Good evening!" The sales associate was a man about my age with silver hair and an impeccably pressed shirt. "I'm Robert. How can we help you today?" "I need a suit for a special occasion." Robert's trained eye assessed me quickly. My posture, my build, the confidence in my voice. "You look fantastic, sir. Have you lost weight recently?" "You could say I've returned to life." He led me through the store, past racks of suits, organized by style and season. "What's the occasion, if you don't mind my asking?" "My daughter's wedding. I want to make sure I look appropriate." "Congratulations. Father of the bride is a special honor." If only he knew. Something that makes a statement. We settled on a charcoal gray suit with subtle pinstripes. Classic, expensive, unmistakably elegant. Robert was a master of his craft, pinning adjustments with swift precision while explaining the nuances of proper fit. "The jacket should embrace your torso without clinging," he said, adjusting the shoulders. "We want to honor your build, which is quite impressive for a man your age. You clearly take care of yourself." In the fitting room mirror, I looked like a different person entirely. The suit transformed my engineer's frame into something that commanded attention and respect. This wasn't the broken widower who'd sat in that cafe chair 2 months ago, desperately trying to please his ungrateful daughter. This was a man who belonged in any room he entered. "Perfect fit," Robert declared. "When do you need it?" "The wedding is June 22nd, a Saturday. Plenty of time for final alterations. We'll have it ready by the 15th? I paid for the suit, shirt, tie, and shoes with my credit card, watching the total climb without flinching. This wasn't just clothing. It was armor for the battle ahead. Driving home through the warm May evening, I felt the satisfaction of a campaign well executed. Every morning run, every weight lifted, every hungry night had led to this moment of preparation. Beatrice had wanted me to stay away because I was too disgusting for her perfect day. She was going to get exactly what she paid for, a lesson in what happens when you mistake your father's love for weakness and his absence for victory. 3 months and 4 days after my daughter called me disgusting, I stood before my bedroom mirror, adjusting the Windsor knot on a silk tie that cost more than I used to spend on groceries in a month. The man looking back at me bore little resemblance to the broken father who'd written that $40,000 check in March. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the formal attire laid out on my bed like ceremonial armor. The charcoal suit with subtle pinstripes, tailored to perfection by Robert at Mitchell's. Italian leather shoes that gleamed like black mirrors. A white dress shirt so crisp it could cut paper. Each piece represented a step in my transformation from the man she'd dismissed to someone she wouldn't recognize. I'd woken at 5 a.m., not from anxiety, but from anticipation. The same focused energy that had carried me through Firebase Charlie in Vietnam now pulsed through my preparation ritual. Shower, shave, cologne, the expensive kind that smelled of confidence and cedar. Every detail mattered today. The envelope sat on my dresser, cream-colored and elegant. Inside was my carefully prepared invoice for wedding consultation services and father of the bride exclusion fee. $40,000, itemized with an engineer's precision. At the bottom, in my neat handwriting, payment terms, respect due upon receipt. I slid the envelope into my jacket's inside pocket, feeling its weight against my chest. This wasn't just paper and ink, it was justice served on fine stationery. The mirror reflected a transformation that went deeper than lost weight and tailored clothing. My posture was straight, shoulders back, chin level. The defeated slouch that had marked me for months after Martha's death was gone, replaced by the bearing of a man who'd rebuilt himself from shame into strength. Disgusting, she'd called me. The word had carved itself into my psyche that March morning, a blade that had initially wounded but ultimately motivated. Every morning at Peak Fitness, every declined dessert, every moment of pain had been payment toward this reckoning. I fastened platinum cufflinks, another gift to myself, and checked my appearance one final time. The face in the mirror was lean, defined, alert. My gray hair was expertly cut and styled. Even my hands looked different, manicured, strong, confident. Outside, my truck waited in the driveway, freshly detailed for the occasion. The drive to Rose Garden Pavilion would take 25 minutes. The ceremony started at 4 o'clock. Perfect timing for an entrance that would make the afternoon memorable for everyone involved. I walked through my house one last time, past the family photos that told the story of who I'd been. The man in those pictures, holding baby Beatrice, teaching her to ride a bicycle, beaming at her graduation, that man had been discarded like an embarrassing mistake. Today he was returning as someone entirely different. The keys felt solid in my palm as I locked the front door behind me. My reflection in the truck's window showed a man ready for anything. After 3 months of transformation, it was time for revelation. Starting the engine, I pulled out of the driveway and headed toward Washington Park. Beatrice was about to learn what happens when you mistake your father's love for weakness and his temporary defeat for permanent surrender. The wedding would be everything she'd dreamed of, including a surprise guest she never expected to see. The parking attendant directed me to a space between a Mercedes and a Tesla, the kind of expensive cars I'd expected at Richard's society wedding. Walking toward the pavilion, I could hear the string quartet playing something classical and romantic, notes floating over the rose gardens like audible perfume. 2 young men in matching black suits stood at the ceremony entrance, checking names against a guest list. The taller one looked up as I approached, his expression politely professional. "Good afternoon, sir. Are you here for the Bryant Hayes wedding?" "I am indeed." I straightened my tie, projecting the confidence of someone who belonged. "Beautiful day for it." "Absolutely. Friend of the bride or groom?" The question hung in the air for a moment. "I'm close to the family." He gestured toward the seating area without checking his list. Why would he? I looked like any other well-dressed wedding guest, not the excluded father who'd been deemed too embarrassing to attend. The ceremony was in progress, Beatrice and Richard standing before an arch of white roses, while the officiant spoke about love and commitment. I chose a seat toward the back, far enough away to remain unnoticed, but close enough to see everything clearly. She was radiant in her wedding dress, a flowing creation of silk and lace that caught the afternoon light like captured starlight. Her chestnut hair was styled in an elegant updo, secured with what looked like Martha's antique hair combs. Despite everything, she was still my daughter, and seeing her on her wedding day stirred emotions I hadn't prepared for. "Beautiful ceremony, isn't it?" whispered the woman beside me, a silver-haired lady in a navy dress. "Breathtaking," I agreed. "Do you know the families well?" "Oh, I work with Richard's company. Such a lovely couple, though I heard there was some sadness with the bride's father." "Oh?" She leaned closer, dropping her voice. "Apparently he passed away recently. Very tragic. That's why she's walking down the aisle alone." I nearly choked on my own breath. "Is that so?" Richard mentioned it during the rehearsal dinner. Poor girl, losing her father right before her wedding. But she's being so brave about it. The ceremony continued while I processed this revelation. Beatrice hadn't just excluded me. She'd killed me off entirely. In the story she'd told her new husband and his family, I was safely buried and forgotten, unable to embarrass anyone ever again. The officiant asked if anyone had objections to the union. I remained silent, but my fingers traced the envelope in my jacket pocket. Soon enough, there would be time for objections. "You may kiss the bride," the officiant announced, and Richard lifted Beatrice's veil for their first married kiss. The guests erupted in applause and cheers as the newlyweds walked back down the aisle, beaming with joy. I joined the applause, clapping for my daughter's happiness while planning her education. As guests filed toward the reception hall, I fell into step with the crowd. The woman beside me continued chatting about the beautiful ceremony, the lovely venue, the romantic atmosphere. I made appropriate responses while studying the reception layout through the tall windows. Round tables with rose centerpieces filled the elegant space. A head table at the front awaited the wedding party, while a jazz quartet set up near the dance floor. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, and the photographer moved through the crowd, capturing candid moments. "Such a shame about her father," the woman said again as we entered the reception area. "But at least she has Richard's wonderful family now." "Yes," I said, accepting a champagne flute from a passing waiter. "I'm sure he would have been very proud of her today." The irony was delicious. Here I stood, mourning my own fictional death, while preparing to resurrect myself in the most spectacular way possible. Beatrice had made me disappear to avoid embarrassment. In a few minutes, I would reappear to provide her with an entirely different kind of memorable moment. I positioned myself near the bar, where I could observe the head table while maintaining my anonymous guest status. Beatrice sat beside her new husband, accepting congratulations and posing for photos, glowing with the satisfaction of a perfect wedding day. She had no idea that her biggest surprise was still to come. The cocktail hour was in full swing when I made my move. Beatrice stood near the gift table, champagne flute in hand, laughing at something one of her bridesmaids had whispered. She looked radiant in the warm light of the reception hall, every inch the perfect bride she'd dreamed of becoming. I approached slowly, deliberately, timing my movement for when she was between conversations. Her bridesmaid excused herself to visit the restroom, leaving Beatrice momentarily alone. "Perfect." "Excuse me," I said, stepping into her line of sight. She looked up with the practiced smile of a bride greeting wedding guests, her eyes taking in my appearance without recognition. For a moment I watched her mind work, trying to place this well-dressed stranger who seemed familiar but out of context. Then it hit her. The champagne flute slipped from her fingers as if her nervous system had simply short-circuited. Crystal shattered against the hardwood floor, sending champagne and glass fragments across her white satin shoes. The sound cut through the ambient chatter like a gunshot, causing nearby guests to turn and stare. "Dad?" The word came out as a whisper, then louder, more desperate. "Dad? Is that really you?" "Hello, Beatrice." I kept my voice calm, controlled. "Beautiful wedding. You look absolutely radiant." Her hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide with shock. She stared at me as if I were a ghost materialized from her worst nightmare, which in a way I suppose I was. I can't believe it. You look so different." She gestured helplessly at my transformation, her voice rising with each word. When did you?" 3 months can work wonders," I said, adjusting my cufflinks with deliberate casualness. "Perhaps I'm not quite as disgusting as you believed." Richard appeared at her side, drawn by the commotion and his new wife's obvious distress. His confused gaze moved between us, trying to understand the connection. "Beatrice, what's wrong? Who is this?" She struggled with the words, her carefully constructed narrative crumbling. "This is my father." Richard's face went through several rapid expressions: confusion, disbelief, then dawning understanding. "Your father? But I thought you said he was dead," I supplied helpfully. "Yes, I heard about my unfortunate demise. Very touching story, actually. Lost right before the wedding. Such tragic timing." A small crowd was gathering, drawn by the broken glass and the bride's obvious shock. I could hear whispers starting, the kind of urgent murmuring that spreads through social events when drama unfolds. "Dad, please," Beatrice whispered, grabbing my arm with desperate fingers. "I'm so sorry about what I said before. I didn't mean it. Please don't ruin this. Please stay. You're welcome here. You're my father." The transformation in her tone was remarkable, from dismissive cruelty 3 months ago to desperate pleading now. Amazing what a little embarrassment in front of important people could accomplish. "You want me to stay?" I asked, raising my voice just enough for nearby guests to hear. "At your wedding? How generous of you." Yes, of course. I was wrong before. I was stressed and said terrible things. But you're here now, and you look wonderful, and how interesting. I smiled, the expression perfectly pleasant and absolutely predatory. 3 months ago, you had quite different feelings about my attendance, called me too disgusting to be seen with, if memory serves. Richard stepped closer to his wife, protective instincts kicking in despite his confusion. Sir, I think there might be some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding at all, I said, reaching into my jacket pocket. In fact, I brought a wedding gift, something very special, just for Beatrice. My fingers closed around the cream-colored envelope, and I saw her eyes follow the movement. Somewhere deep in her expression, I caught a flicker of fear. She was beginning to understand that her transformed father might have more surprises in store than just his physical appearance. A gift? She said weakly. Dad, you don't need to. Oh, but I do. I smiled again, feeling the weight of 3 months' worth of justice in my jacket pocket. After all, what kind of father would I be if I didn't give my daughter exactly what she deserves on her wedding day? The shattered champagne glass had been swept away, and for a moment the reception hall settled into an uncomfortable calm. Beatrice stood beside me, her face flushed with relief and nervous energy, while Richard hovered nearby like a diplomat trying to prevent an international incident. I'm so glad you're here, Dad, Beatrice said, reaching for my arm with trembling fingers. I was wrong to say those things. Stress makes people say terrible things they don't mean. The guests who had witnessed our reunion began returning to their conversations, the immediate drama apparently resolved. Someone laughed at a nearby table. The jazz quartet started playing again. Wedding normalcy was reasserting itself, and Beatrice was visibly relaxing as she realized her perfect day might be salvaged after all. Of course I forgave you, sweetheart, I said, patting her hand gently. After all, what kind of father would I be if I didn't bring you a proper wedding gift? Her eyes brightened immediately. Oh, Dad, you didn't need to bring anything. Having you here is gift enough. Nonsense. I reached into my jacket pocket and withdrew the cream-colored envelope I'd prepared so carefully. Every bride deserves something special from her father on her wedding day. Richard stepped closer, his expression warming. That's very thoughtful of you, sir. I look forward to getting to know you better. I held the envelope toward Beatrice with both hands, the way I'd once presented her with birthday presents when she was small. This is my wedding gift to you, sweetheart. Open it. She accepted it with the same bright smile she'd worn as a child, her fingers working at the elegant seal. You're so sweet, Dad. I can't wait to see what... The smile froze on her face as she pulled out the contents. Her eyes scanned the professional letterhead, the itemized list, the bold figure at the bottom. For a moment, she simply stared, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing. What? What is this? Her voice came out as a whisper. Your wedding bill, I said calmly. $40,000 plus administrative fees and emotional damages, itemized for services rendered in wedding consultation and father of the bride exclusion. The color drained from her face, then flooded back in a wave of crimson fury. This is a joke, right? This has to be a joke. I'm afraid not. You see, when you called me too disgusting to attend your wedding and then took my money anyway, you established our relationship as a business transaction. I'm simply providing you with the invoice. Richard moved closer, trying to read over her shoulder. Beatrice, what's he talking about? What invoice? He's billing me. Her voice was rising now, drawing attention from nearby tables. For the money I asked him for, he's treating me like a client. Just like you treated me like a bank account, I replied evenly. Funny how that works. She crumpled the invoice in her fist, her composure completely shattered. You can't do this. This is my wedding day. These are our guests. The same guests you were so worried I would embarrass? I gestured around the elegant reception hall. Strange how that concern has suddenly evaporated. Richard stepped between us, his hands raised in a peacekeeping gesture. Look, let's all take a step back here. This is obviously a family misunderstanding that we can work out privately. There's no misunderstanding, Beatrice snapped, waving the crumpled invoice. He's trying to humiliate me in front of everyone. Humiliate you? I adjusted my cufflinks, a gesture I'd practiced until it became automatic. My dear daughter, you accomplished that all by yourself 3 months ago. I'm simply returning the favor. The conversation at surrounding tables was dying away, as more guests became aware of the family drama unfolding. I could see heads turning, ears straining to catch our words. The wedding photographer was discreetly positioning himself for potential shots, sensing that this moment would be remembered long after the ceremony was forgotten. "Dad, please!" Beatrice's voice cracked with desperation. "Don't do this. Not here. Not now." I looked at her for a long moment, seeing not the cruel woman who had dismissed me as disgusting, but the little girl who had once believed her father could do anything. The transformation had changed more than my appearance. It had given me the strength to demand the respect I'd always deserved. "You want me to stop?" I asked quietly. "Then perhaps it's time everyone knew the whole story." I turned toward the microphone stand where the jazz quartet's lead singer had been performing moments earlier. The band was taking a break, and the microphone stood waiting, silver and beckoning, like a sword waiting to be drawn. Richard grabbed my arm. "Sir, please, whatever happened between you two, this isn't the place." "On the contrary," I said, gently removing his hand, "this is exactly the place." The microphone felt solid in my hand as I tapped it twice, the sound echoing through the reception hall like a judge's gavel. Conversations died away as 150 wedding guests turned their attention toward me, expecting perhaps a traditional father of the bride toast. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system, "thank you for your attention. I'd like to say a few words about my daughter Beatrice." Behind me I could hear her frantic whisper, "Dad, stop this, please." I turned slightly, just enough to include her in my peripheral vision. 3 months ago, Beatrice came to me with wonderful news. She was engaged to Richard, and she wanted the wedding of her dreams. A murmur of interest rippled through the crowd. This sounded like a perfectly normal wedding speech. "She asked me for $40,000 to make her perfect day possible, and being a father who loves his daughter, I gave her every penny without hesitation." Nods of approval from the audience. A generous father supporting his daughter's happiness. What could be more touching? "But then," I continued, letting my voice carry the weight of betrayal, "she told me something else. She said I was too disgusting to attend this wedding, that I would embarrass her in front of all of you important people. She took my money and banned me from my own daughter's wedding." The change in the room was immediate and electric. Gasps echoed from multiple tables. I saw hands fly to mouths, eyes widen in shock. The guests who had been smiling and nodding moments before now stared at Beatrice with expressions ranging from confusion to horror. "Dad, that's not how it happened." Beatrice's voice cracked as she tried to interrupt, but the microphone was mine now, so I decided to show her, and myself, what I was truly worth. I gestured to my transformed appearance. Every morning at the gym was preparation for this moment. Every pound lost was proof that respect must be earned, not simply given because someone shares your blood. An elderly woman at a front table leaned forward, studying my face with new understanding. "My goodness," she whispered, loud enough for others to hear. "Look at him. He's completely transformed himself." "That's right," I continued, warming to my theme. "This is what 3 months of determination looks like when someone you love calls you disgusting. This is what happens when a father decides he deserves better treatment from his own child." Richard was pulling at Beatrice's arm, trying to get her to leave the immediate area, but she seemed frozen in place, watching her perfect wedding day crumble around her like tissue paper in rain. "She told everyone I was dead," I said, letting that revelation hang in the air. Rather than admit she had excluded her own father from her wedding, she simply erased me from existence. How convenient. The murmurs were growing louder now. I could see guests turning to each other, processing this information, making judgments. The social pressure was building exactly as I had hoped. But I'm very much alive, as you can see. Alive and well, and 43 pounds lighter than the man she called too disgusting to be seen with. A man from Richard's side of the family stood up suddenly. "This is outrageous. How could you treat your father this way?" Others were nodding, their expressions shifting from confusion to disapproval. The moral weight of the room was turning against Beatrice, like a tide changing direction. "Please," she tried once more, her voice barely audible over the growing murmur of judgment. "This is my wedding day." "Yes, it is," I agreed, adjusting the microphone stand. "The wedding day you paid for with my money. while ensuring I wouldn't be here to see it. Well, Beatrice, sometimes the best wedding gift is a lesson in consequences. I could see tears starting to form in her eyes, but I felt no pity. She had made her choice 3 months ago when she decided her father's love was worth $40,000, but his presence was worth nothing. I want everyone here to see what transformation looks like, I concluded, both physical and moral. And I want my daughter to understand that respect is not something you take from the people who love you. It's something you earn. The applause started slowly from the elderly woman in front, then spread through the room like wildfire. Within moments, most of the reception was clapping, not for Beatrice and her perfect wedding, but for the father who had refused to stay buried in shame. I set the microphone back in its stand and turned toward the exit, my head held high. The applause followed me as I stepped away from the microphone, growing stronger rather than fading. Individual voices began to rise from the crowd, calling out approval and support. "Bravo!" shouted someone from the back. "Absolutely magnificent!" "What courage!" called out another guest. "You look incredible, sir!" I nodded graciously to the crowd, my transformation on full display as I moved through the reception hall. The elderly woman who had first recognized my change approached me directly, her eyes bright with admiration. "Young man," she said, and I nearly smiled at being called young at 65. "What you've accomplished is extraordinary, both your physical transformation and your moral courage. I'm Margaret Fairfield. I've known Richard's family for years." "Thank you, Mrs. Fairfield. I appreciate your kind words." "That daughter of yours had no right to treat you so shamefully," she continued, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "A father deserves respect, especially one willing to sacrifice so much for his child's happiness." More guests were approaching now, forming a receiving line of sorts. A distinguished gentleman in his 50s stepped forward, extending his hand. "Robert Chen, Richard's business partner. I have to say, your dedication is inspiring. How much weight did you lose?" 43 pounds, I replied, accepting his firm handshake, along with a considerable amount of misplaced trust. He winced sympathetically. "Family can be complicated, but what you've shown here tonight, standing up for yourself with such dignity, that's something special." Behind this growing circle of supporters, I could see Beatrice sitting at the head table, her face buried in her hands, while Richard rubbed her shoulders helplessly. The wedding reception continued around her, but the celebration had transformed into something else entirely. Guests were no longer focused on congratulating the bride. They were processing a moral lesson about respect and consequences. A younger woman approached, someone I recognized as one of Beatrice's bridesmaids. Her expression was thoughtful rather than hostile. "Mr. Bryant, I'm Sarah, Beatrice's maid of honor. I had no idea about any of this. She told us you had passed away recently. As you can see, reports of my death were greatly exaggerated." I straightened my tie, still marveling at how well the expensive suit fit my transformed frame. Sometimes people find it easier to bury inconvenient truths rather than face them. Sarah glanced back toward the head table, then returned her attention to me. "What you've accomplished is amazing. I hope she learns from this." "That, my dear, is entirely up to her." The crowd around me was growing, and I realized it was time for my exit. I had said what needed to be said, demonstrated what needed to be proven. Justice had been served with the dignity it deserved. I raised my voice slightly to address the gathering supporters. "Thank you all for your kind words and understanding. Tonight has shown me that respect is indeed something that must be earned, and apparently I've earned yours." More applause erupted, accompanied by calls of "Hear, hear," and "Well said." I turned toward Beatrice one final time. She was looking at me now, mascara streaked down her cheeks, her perfect wedding makeup ruined by tears of humiliation and regret. "I hope you now understand the value of respect, daughter," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the reception hall. "Every father deserves dignity from his children. Remember that in your marriage." Richard nodded at me over her head, his expression conveying both apology and newfound understanding. He was a good man who had married into a complicated situation, and I felt sorry for him. The crowd parted respectfully as I walked toward the exit, guests stepping aside and continuing to offer words of encouragement and praise. The transformation they were witnessing wasn't just physical, it was the restoration of a man's dignity through perseverance and moral courage. Outside, the June evening was warm and perfect, Portland's summer air carrying the scent of roses from the garden. I walked to my truck with measured steps, each one carrying me further from the broken relationship I had tried so hard to preserve and closer to the self-respect I had worked 3 months to rebuild. As I started the engine, I could see guests still streaming out of the reception hall, some heading to their cars while others gathered in small groups, discussing what they had just witnessed. The wedding would be remembered, but not for the reasons Beatrice had planned. Driving home through the familiar streets of Laurelhurst, I felt a satisfaction deeper than mere revenge. I had proven to myself, to my daughter, and to everyone present, that transformation was possible at any age, and that dignity was worth fighting for. The man who had been called disgusting 3 months ago was gone forever. In his place was someone who commanded respect, not through demands or manipulation, but through character, perseverance, and the courage to demand the treatment he deserved. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight, justice had been served with the dignity it required. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.